I'm Brandon.
And I'm Brandon.
And welcome back to Apollo City Comics, your everything podcast. What did you call it, Brandon? I keep on messing that. It changes.
Girl, I got this. Your everything and anything comic book podcast.
There we go. Formerly your comic book commentary show, your comic book conversation show, and we're just like, you know what? We do so much now. I mean, just it's whatever you need. We got it. But we have a really fun episode today. And as we continue our road to 100 and our 3rd-year anniversary coming up, we got this really awesome interview lined up for you guys. But first, got to remind you to check out Lesser Known Comics. Check out their Kickstarter and their bio. They're getting closer to their goal, and they have a bunch of cool stuff from Charlie that we interviewed, from Patrick that we interviewed. Mark, the owner, has some new stuff on there, and you get 7 new books with this Kickstarter package. And you can also get books from the former Kickstarters, batches 1 and 2. So they're on number 3 right now. And,
you have 18 days. 18 days left on the Kickstarter. That's all I wanted to add.
Yes. It ends at the end of this month, so jump on that. You know what? Let us know if you did, and we'll even give you a shout out to give you some representation because you deserve it for supporting those guys. And of course, I have it with me right now. coffeeandacomic.com. Hit up Frank over at Coffee and a Comic. He'll get you your pull list started. He'll order books for you. He just got me the Bill Sienkiewicz Venom #1 cover, so I'm pretty hyped about that. Just send him a request, see what's up, and if you use code Apollo City Podcast, I want to say I always mess it up every time. It's in the bottom in the bio. Check it out and head over there and tell them that we sent you. But on to today, ladies and gentlemen, we have writer, teacher extraordinaire Jason Douglas with us, a writer for the Ringo nominee, Parallel from Source Point Press. Jason, dude, good to have you on. Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the show.
Brandon, it is fantastic to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Your book, Parallel, I just want to talk about it really quick as we dive into the show. There's a link to it at the bottom where you could purchase it, PDF format. If there happens to be physicals at some point, keep an eye on his social media for that. But what an astonishing book. I got to say, I grew up as a musician. Brandon grew up as a musician. We know the struggle, kind of a little bit of spoilers for those of you who haven't checked it out. But, we've struggled with the whole concept with your book. Trying to decide between stability and living that rock star life, and then living that author-writer life, and just living that creative life in general. It doesn't matter what route you take. There's always that big consequence of, am I going to survive doing this? I'm going to take the risk. Am I going to drop everything around me and then gun for it and hope I make it out there? How long has this been building up inside you? Was this based on a personal experience? Tell us more.
Yeah, all very good questions. So Parallel is if you're looking at it from the outside, if you're looking from the surface, it's kind of a balance. The story itself is a balance of who I am as a comic fan and the kind of things that I wanted to tell stories about, because its wrapping is very much like a dark sci-fi tale, right? 64-page, one-shot graphic novel, right? Kind of, you maybe get a vibe of Black Mirror out of it at certain points. And it's this dark tale that begs the deeper question of you, what price would you pay for a second chance at all the dreams that you left behind, right? It's even though it's this kind of twisted dark tale and it's got that sci-fi comic wrapping, it's really got these deeper themes at the core of it, which were kind of itching and burning inside of me, of that existential dread of time passing, right? That idea of dreams deferred, of pushing things aside for, like you said, comfort, for ease. It's always easier to stagnate than it is to maybe take a bold leap forward. And that's kind of Landon's story, right? He's in his early 20s. He gives up on his dreams of pursuing a career in music, and then use that universal relatability of you sub in whatever your dream was, right? And he sets that aside, and in the idea of, this is the right thing for right now. And then you blink your eyes and suddenly 5 or 8 or 10 years have gone by, and Landon, our main character, is having what the kids are calling the quarter life crisis, right? Where all that time has drifted by and that stagnation sets in, and you realize that maybe it's too late, right? Now, how does that manifest for anybody in the world? I think we all manifest it differently. Landon's, there's anxiety for it. There's the existential dread I talked about. There's the depression that comes with it. Mm-hmm. And the difference with Landon is his manifests, and he starts to hear voices and he starts to see visions. And unfortunately, what those visions and voices, a different version of him are offering, this second chance, this dream that was left behind, might not be in his best interest in the here and now, physically and mentally. And he's got decisions to make, right? That second chance at that life you really wanted, in his case, music stardom and a life of creative fulfillment and fame. Well, it's just like, it's so tempting because it's what you've always wanted. Most people don't get that second chance, but the price is going to be pretty damn high. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what the story is in a nutshell. So kind of like a candy coating, but really dark and hopefully universally relatable at the center. It's funny that you ask about like, how does that relate to me? Well, if you look at me as a person, I have always wanted to make comics since I was little. Mm-hmm. And yet here I am 22 years into a teaching career, and it took me hitting like 40 years old. Yes, I am very old. To spur that on, I mean, mm-hmm. It's not like I didn't want to do this earlier.
Yeah.
It's not even like, check this out, guys. It's not even like the idea for at least the sci-fi construct of Parallel didn't pop up in a conversation with a buddy of mine, like two old comic book nerds who just are like, wouldn't that be cool to tell that story? Wouldn't that be cool? Like on the phone, almost a year before I sat down and wrote the first line. Mm-hmm. Am I feeling that own time passing? Sure. Do I have an idea for a cool story? Absolutely. And yet that's still not enough to get me out of my own malaise and get me that fire under your butt to actually make you take that leap, right? Mm-hmm. It was actually interesting because it was two of my worlds colliding. So I've been a teacher long enough where I started in elementary school where I've got these students who are now old enough to actually be at that spot that Landon is in the book, right? Pushing 30 and waking up in a life that they thought was going to last for 6 months. And they had all the time in the world ahead of them to create their dreams that they had at 21, 22. And it just hasn't happened yet. I remember a very specific conversation with a former student of mine that I was still in contact with. And she was just like, I'm going to be 30 next year. Why am I not in Chicago? Why didn't I open that dance studio that I knew I was going to, and I had all the time in the world, and now it's too late? And that was the spark. And it all came together, and I sat down a couple of summers ago and I thought, now's the time. And I sat down and I started writing. So it's really like this coming together of that catalyst of somebody living that story that Landon's living. My own personal version of it, a little bit closer to a midlife crisis than a quarter life crisis, if I'm being honest with myself. And then kind of like my comic book fandom going, yeah, but I still want to have it like be fun and twisted, and in this case, a sci-fi genre story at the exact same time.
Okay.
And I think that's where it hits us. Brandon and I are both just months apart in age, and his birthday's next week, actually. Hey,
turning
happy
30.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I turned 30 in April. We're both on that road of just like, I was in a band and I toured and we did all this cool stuff and it fell apart, and then I drifted away from music, and then I discovered my love for writing about 5 years ago, 7 years, 2015, however long that is now in years, and then it's just like you're approaching this age and you're like, is it too late? Am I running out of stuff? Am I running out of juice? Why am I tired every day? Why does everything seem harder? Do I blame like COVID and the past year we went through? Is this just a natural thing? So let me ask you, is it ever too late?
It's a really good question. I mean, it wasn't too late for me. Mm-hmm. I think there's a handful of things that I really hope, besides entertainment value, besides bang for your buck, that people who read Parallel take away from it. And one of them is definitely the mental health aspect, right? You've got this situation where I truly, truly believe what Landon is going through is pretty much a universal experience that all of us go through at one time or another.
We've all had that shitty person in
Yeah,
our life,
yeah.
that shitty relationship.
He's the musician, you're the writer, you're the dance. It's anything. We always defer dreams, right? We always think we have more time than we do. We always think that, especially when we're young. And I always thought that kind of the biggest irony of that situation, just as a human condition, is that whenever and however it manifests for you, whether it's depression, anxiety, dread, however it gets you, it's a very isolating experience, right? You feel very alone in that. It feels like this is your struggle, and it just kind of, some people bottle it up, some people break down, some people crack up, but they tend to do it alone. And the kind of twisted irony is, of course, everybody's going through some kind of version of it, right? And so, like, one of the things I really hope people take away from the book is, like, in the same way that Brandon does get mental professional help, like, you should always reach out. You should always ask for help, whether it's a mental professional or whether it's family or whether it's friends, because no matter how isolating that kind of feeling is, everybody's going through some version of it, and you shouldn't do it alone. I mean, the other thing that I hope people take away from it is, like, I mean, I don't want to say it's never too late, because I think it's not about, I talk about this universal struggle, but it's not a universal answer. I think it's more like, it's kind of up to you, because I truly believe that it's always easier to do nothing than to do something. Like I've lived decades of my life because it's easier to do nothing than to do something, right? Wouldn't I have started something that was a deep-seated lifelong dream of mine 5, 10, 15, 20 years before I did, if it wasn't easier to do nothing than something? Probably. And so, like, whether, you don't want to get down to the technicalities, right? Like, I'm thinking about how you talk in front of a group of elementary school students or 8th graders like I teach now. And if you speak in absolutes, you will always get a, but what if, right? Whether it's a hypothetical or a real situation. So, like, I'm very careful of saying, like, it's never too late, because then some kid goes, so you're saying that if you want to play in the NBA and you're 85, like, I can make it happen. Like, okay, shut up. Fine. Loopholes. Fine. Though LeBron's a robot. Maybe LeBron's playing at 85. I don't know. There's a first time for everything, Brandon's. But you know what I mean? Like
next week you have an 85-year-old.
I think the more important way to answer that question is it ever too late? Is it never too late? I think it's an individual thing, and the answer is yes and no. But maybe more importantly, the answer is, and I apologize for fumbling a little bit, because this is a great question, because I've never really thought about it this way before. I think the better answer is, it's up to you. And it's more, it's not even about pursuing that deferred dream, as more about making the choice to do something about it.
There you go.
And even if it ends up being a different version, or even if it ends up being something else that you pursue, motivated out of this thing that has been closed on. It's about doing the opposite of what I said before. It's about doing something instead of nothing.
There you go.
And no matter where the motivation for that comes, that's maybe the right answer and the healthiest answer.
Yeah, it lies upon you. It's a perfect example being, like, any one of us. Like, for me, I didn't graduate college until recently, maybe barely a year or two ago, and that's because I dropped out, started working, and I said, okay, I got to get my shit together, and I might not be able to do my music career, but I got to do something about it. So what is my other passion, and what goal do I need to give myself in order to get there? And it did start with me once I climbed out of a bit of a hole,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. And the thing with the book, from what I'm hearing, because I was the doo-doo head who didn't read it yet, is that it's like that universal anxiety, right? Like that you have a dream as a kid or a teenager in your early 20s, you want to be a musician like myself, and it never took off. And so it kind of like speaks to you in the sense that, like, you're here now, like 15 years later, you're like, okay, what do I do about it? And can I do something about it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
agreed.
It's like the hardest thing to do, no matter like what you were saying exactly to the T. I mean, here I am. I'm trying to. We have the podcast, and we're both aspiring writers. We both have things in the air, but until things happen, you never know if they're gonna land. And we have some cool stuff, but it's always just like that fear of being a creator. It's not. I was talking to my fiance about this. I mean, she does finance, and we were just talking about job occupations, and I'm like, thank God you're in finance because I'm a writer. And it's one of those things. It's like, okay, she's wrapping up school, she's in it, and then when she's out of school, she could find a job, and from that job, it can kind of go places, and then you have that path as like a lawyer and a doctor is like it's right in front of you, and as a creator, you're just like
it's all up to you.
Yeah, it's like if I don't continue pushing and learning and like writing and practicing and it's more connecting and networking and everything, like how are we going to all survive without each other? Like we live off of everybody else literally just to like
and yet it's still not a pure meritocracy either. I mean there's dumb luck involved. There is a break here, a break there, a rejection for no reason. There's so many of these other factors that it like in the creative life, it can be, it's not surprising that it's probably like a creative life or a creative dream is probably one of the most common deferred of all dreams, because it can be absolutely crippling the amount of what ifs that pile up.
Yes.
That you can pour your heart, blood, sweat, tears into something, and there's still enough what ifs there that it doesn't go anywhere, and it has nothing to do with how much blood, sweat, and tears you put into it. That can kind of stop you from doing it in the first place.
Not to mention you're working, you got the whole starving artist thing working against you as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll tell you, probably the greatest advice I ever got came from one of my writing heroes, directly from him, one Mr. Neil Gaiman, who you may have heard of.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And you may have heard of that dude. He's like really famous.
You don't say, huh?
He's really successful. I got the honor of not only meeting him but hanging out and having a private conversation with him way back in 2004. So this is stuck in my brain, but like not like a direct. It's not like he told me this and the next day I sat down and write. It started writing. It still took 15 years. But I was at this convention. It was like an open source Linux convention. I only went. It's like a computer convention. I don't know anything about it. I only went.
I was like, wait, Linux convention? I've never heard of that.
It took a second to register in my brain.
Like, wait, what?
He's like his oldest at the time, his son had just gotten a job.
Oh, okay. I was like, why is he there?
Or something like that. Yeah, and Neil was there, and like he did readings and stuff, and then I went to this room, and he was there, and I was teaching fourth grade at the time, and one of his daughters was literally a fourth grader, and my fourth graders had. We were doing this thing where one of our end of the year treats was we used to listen to Coraline on CD read by Neil by candlelight to be like extra creepy and extra awesome.
Nice.
And my kids had written him all these letters, and he got them, and he knew who we were, and he wrote back, and he signed all this great stuff for us, and it was beautiful. And I got to sit down and I just had this conversation with one of my heroes for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I know. That's the stuff we dream of, like when meeting people.
Neil said two sentences to me, and that was like more knowledge than I could comprehend. And 30 minutes sounds just cosmic.
And and we talked about, like, he asked me questions about like fourth grade reading level stuff and like advice for his daughter. It was like it was amazing. And had he not been the amazing, gregarious, real human that he was, I probably would have been a bumbling idiot fool, but it turned into this nice conversation. But the thing that really stuck with me that we talked about and that he said to me, and this is not like private information. This is stuff that he says in like public speeches and stuff too. And it's the advice that sounds trite on the surface, which is when somebody asks him, like, how do you write a comic specifically? And he says, well, you write a comic.
Yeah.
And then, right. But when you peel back the layers on that, and the way that I think about that, and the way he sometimes explains it further is, you just have to do it, because if you do it, then it exists, right? If you form a band, then the band exists. If you write a song, then the song exists. If you make a podcast, the podcast now exists. And you can't make a promise. The promise isn't made to you that your book or your comic or your podcast will be good. But the fact that it exists in the world means you can make it good if it's not. You can put it in the world and have other people help you with it or see it or connect to it or whatever. Or maybe it's the most brilliant thing ever and now it exists in the world and you're off on this rocket ship that you can't even control. But what he wanted to make very clear is if you don't write your comic, nothing will happen. That's the promise that is made, right? If you don't make the thing, I can, and I tell 8th graders this all the time. If you don't do X, I guarantee you nothing will happen.
There you go.
I can't promise you what will happen when you make your thing, right? Maybe something, maybe nothing, maybe something in between. But I promise you that if you don't do it, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's how you sit for 20 years or 7 years. And then you get the existential dread of time passing because you didn't do it.
It's kind of funny when you get advice like that. It's because like when you hear it, it like flows through you. You're like, oh God, that's the piece I was missing. Oh, that's all you have to do. And when I met, it's really, I know it's funny because when I met Max Brooks, I was at WonderCon. I forget which year.
Oh wow, yeah.
I went to one of his panels. I got to like meet him for a second and like say what's up. But he was talking about his books and his writing process, and then he did like a question, like a Q&A thing, right? And someone in the audience was like, you know, how do you write a book? And he literally was like, you write. Next question. And
it's true. It sounds like the most trite, dismissive answer, and it's like there's more truth in that than almost
a single worded answer. And then the person's like, oh, I guess you just write a book then. But
yeah, absolutely.
Now that we're talking about like writers and writing, I kind of want to pick your brain a little about some stuff. So my biggest question, or it's a multi-part one, I guess. So if this Goodreads page is correct on you, because Parallel is listed here with your author name and everything, and other works you've done, from the looks of it, this is your first published comic, correct?
Absolutely. This is the first script I wrote, first published comic. I've had plays published, but this is my first comic for sure. Yeah.
So my question is, you know, you said it took about like 20 years to write this and get it made and everything and finally get the spark to create the comic, right? So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's something I always wanted to do. Now the process itself, indie comics take a long time. A first comic takes a long time. So this entire process was about 3 years from sitting down and typing the first half, the first 32 pages. For Brandon, it's, you know, the scene in the middle where like Landon wakes up out of the coma and he's like, this is all really happening. That I wrote that in a bubble one summer with no idea of what was going to happen next. If it was something that could be in the world, or there's no artist attached, there's no company attached. It's just me pursuing the thing that I thought had to be done. From that point to now is about 3 years.
Okay. So my 2-part question then would be, did you find yourself, because, you know, you said this is something you always want to do. Did you find yourself kind of looking how to create a comic from a writer's perspective? And on top of that, did you find yourself as someone who was kind of writing at the edge of your seat where you're just kind of going with it? Or did you try to plan everything out, plot it out on maybe like a chalkboard or something, or a bunch of notes scattered everywhere, you know, that kind of thing?
So I can answer all of those questions and all those parts with one word. Yes.
Works for me.
All of it. All of it. So, oh God, how can I, okay. So I went into the process with a huge amount of blissful ignorance and a huge amount of irrational confidence, because I had fairly legitimate like stage writing chops. When I decided to take a summer off from writing a 1-act play, I had this 11-month process for several years where I was writing a 1-act play in the summer, running a drama club boot camp thing in the fall, auditioning kids and then rehearsing kids all winter and spring and then putting on a show and then taking 1 month off and starting it again. Did that with an elementary school drama club, and then I did that with a middle school drama club. And speaking about existential dread, my children's lives were passing before my eyes and I wasn't there. And I was like, okay, enough of that. I don't need a second full-time job. I have one already. And so those confluence of events that we talked about before, the spark came, and I decided this one summer, I'm not writing a play, I'm going to write a comic instead. And my irrational confidence was, well, I can sit down and kind of like eyes closed, give you a sketch or even a 1-act play and just know in my brain and flow with how stage direction works and how staging works and beats of dialogue and how that compares with stage left and stage right and all the intricacies of that kind of writing. And, you know, that kind of blissful ignorance, irrational confidence of going, how much harder could it be? You know, he says right before he falls off the cliff of something that is such a different animal and so much more complicated and difficult. It's like one of those things that, like, had I known how much harder it was and how much more intricate it was, it probably would have scared me off and I would have waited another 20 years. Oh my God, it's hilarious. There's so many benchmarks along the last 3 years where had I known better, I probably would have crawled back into a shell and said, screw the whole process. because I just sat down and I'm like, okay, now, but I'm also, to answer another part of your question, I'm also very meticulous, right? Like I'm not going in blind and just like on a sketch pad or like on a legal pad, just like writing half prose, half dialogue, half script, you know, like, I've read enough comics. I've read enough back matter. I know what a script looks like. I want it to be right.
Yeah.
I want to balance the 50 things in my, you know, I didn't go into it like with no self-awareness of, yes, you've got to balance narrative story with visual story, with panel size, with panel shape, with, do you want that bit of information to be revealed on a facing page or on the turn, you know, like I know all that stuff. I haven't done it before, but I know it. And so actually the first thing I did was I got online and I found, I think it was a Fred Van Lente, like sample script, just so I could get the physical of it. Cause like I knew it didn't look like a stage play on the page. Right. And I literally wanted my jumping off point to be, well, how many times do you hit tab for dialogue versus a timestamp versus narration? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And do you put the colon here? Do you do this? How do you number stuff? Like I learned that that like you number your dialogue or your thought balloons for the whole page, even though you're on a different panel, and it is continued numbered. Even though you're on panel 4, you're on, you know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff. I wanted the structure of that. I wanted that cold so that then I could balance the other 50 things. Story, theme, the twists and the turns. I mean, it's just so many more moving parts, which is honestly what I love about comics anyway. Right? If I'm looking at it as an abstract, I truly believe that comics are the most malleable medium to tell a story.
Oh yeah.
It does all these things that film does and all this crap that film cannot.
Yeah.
It does all this stuff that prose can do and a whole bunch of stuff that prose can't. It's like this weird amalgamation in the middle that's a bit of magic, and it lends itself, especially in indie comics, because then you don't have 80 years of infrastructure.
Yeah. There you go.
Sell the next book next month, forget about whatever, continuity, go to hell a little bit and make sure that somebody punches somebody or else, the superhero mandate, right? Not that there's anything wrong with it, I still read it.
Yeah.
But in indie comics especially, you can literally tell any story at all, and the shape and the like I said, the malleability of comics will fit whatever story you want to tell.
Yeah.
So like all that's rushing in my brain all at once. And I think what was cool was because I wrote it in a bubble without the pressure of it actually existing as something in the world yet, right?
Yeah.
without anything attached. It's just, it's time for me to do this thing. It turned into what it turned into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that first half came into existence because I was just with me trying to do the thing I'd always wanted to do. And because I've got enough OCD in me, you know, I made sure that, you know, I made sure it went as right as it could in my own head, my own expectations. You know, I was my own harshest critic. I was my own editor at that point, making sure it did all the things that I would want it to do if I were reading it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talk about balance, and that was one of the big things I noticed when reading it was, like, I knew when Act 1 ended, I knew when Act 2 started and Act 2 closed, and it was, like, for me, like, I feel like I'm going to reflect back to it because it's a good study book. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's a good book to just kind of look at and be like, okay, I need to look at my format, and you're hitting the points on it. And the way you handle, a big thing I noticed with, like, especially indie comics is early indie books, there's either too many words on the page or too little words on the page. And or there's
now, if you ask my editor Bob Sally, who is a hell of a writer in his own, I err on the too many. I'm a bit verbose. You should see my emails. It's embarrassing.
It's your master thesis on the email.
I felt like the balance between, like, the dialogue boxes, the caption boxes, and the word balloons fit things, though. And you explain things in the proper amount of words that you just needed to explain that thought in that sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely something I was hyper aware of. So like an editor might look at the original script of Peril. I mean, we made a couple of line cuts here and there. We cut a scene or two down, and some of that was for pacing and some of that was for page count. But, you know, like you look at it, an editor's going to look and say, this is wordy, but that's okay because it serves the purpose. But I was very much aware of that. I mean, I cut back and I held back, and you've got your silent panels, and you've got the pictures doing some storytelling in there where I mean, and that was there from day one. It's kind of funny, you know, what was in my mind as the spot you don't want to go to is, you know, like I'm a comic book nerd and I'm a history nerd. So when I can combine those two things, and I was thinking back to the 1950s EC comics, where you literally have some of the greatest artists in the history of comics.
Oh yeah.
And you can't see their art and half the panels because L. Feldstein is piling these giant word balloons that are literally repeating in dialogue what the text narration says, blocking out another third of the panel above it. And it's just repeating each other, and you're going, you are not allowed to do that. Like anytime I felt myself going a little too wordy, I'm like, don't be EC comic. Don't do it.
Yeah. They were wordy. I think of, it's funny you bring that up. Just real quick. It's just like, I tried reading some Stan Lee Ditko Spider-Man and like Romita Senior, and I think they were paid by like the word count back then, honestly.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, it's honestly, I'm making fun of EC, which are some of the greatest comics ever written, and I love them. And if we were doing the visual thing, you could see a whole collection of hardcovers behind me. But that kind of hung on as a trend into the 1980s. Yeah, like you know, there's people give the Frank Miller Daredevil early 80s, late 70s, early 80s run as like this seminal like breakthrough of storytelling and stuff like that. Like that there's repetition in narration and dialogue going on even then.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
It helped like spark like the next way of thinking, but it was just like still prominently there, you know.
The other thing too was like, you know, this is something we've brought up multiple times, but for anybody who hasn't heard, you know, the internet didn't really exist back then. So it's not like you could read Final Crisis and go, gee, who's Firestorm? Let me just Google this real quick, you know. It's like you read a comic, and it's, as we've heard before, every comic is someone's first comic. So
right, yeah, I think it wasn't it like Jim Shooter like would said that like every single writer.
Yeah,
that was like
something like that.
In his Marvel heyday, that was like his mandate was that every single comic would be somebody's first. Yes,
and it hurts it going back to it though.
Yeah, but like it's funny because it's funny. It's like even with that being kind of a handcuff for a certain type of writing, certain writers handled it better than others. I mean, even this got old after a while, but I love the way Claremont did it with his 17-year run on X-Men, because you would get those, I mean, the Danger Room scenes as your cold open to introduce everybody's powers and stuff, kind of creative. But like every 10 issues or so, he does the same thing, hits the mandate of it could be their first comic, but they're playing basketball or they're playing baseball in the backyard of the Xavier Mansion. And it's like there was even creative ways to do that, right? Which I always appreciate.
Yeah. God, there was something I wanted to ask you about that completely.
Oh, we were talking process, and now we're in the backyard of the Xavier.
Yeah, I know, right?
Gentlemen, that is my fault.
No, that's us.
I remember now. Sorry. Okay, I got multi-part questions everywhere. The first one being, again, I'm just like really excited to ask all these things. The first one being, you talked about doing some like one-act plays, right? Yeah. I was someone who studied theater script writing in my creative writing degree because I wanted to write comics, and I felt that was the closest to getting in that. It's a completely different beast, but they kind of get you in the same state of mind, in my opinion.
Oh no, there's totally an overlap. I think it's closer to comics than prose.
Yeah.
For
sure. I want to say because basically instead of stage direction, you're doing panel layout.
Yeah. I mean, there's a pacing thing. It's almost, this is going to sound, okay, I've never said this out loud, and this is going to sound completely counterintuitive. But stage writing is more two-dimensional than comic writing is. There's a flatness of the moving and the pacing on stage that you can do things with timing and pacing and the dramatic change of that timing and pacing that you can do in a panel that you can't do on stage. And I'm not doing a very good job explaining this because it's not a fully formed thought, but you would think, I mean, intuitively, stage is 3 dimensions and comics is 2 dimensions. And yet the way I'm seeing it in my head is the opposite. It's a bit, the writing is a bit flatter in what you can do. And I think I mean it by there are no limitations on a comic page of what you can do. There's none. You can bend space and time. You can break rules of physicality and whatever to try to simplify it in a way that you can't do it on the stage. So I think that's kind of what I mean.
You know, I have that same kind of idea when I work on film stuff, and comics is my other thing, and then like a little bit of prose. And so it's like when I think about, you know, a story and I'm like, what format will this suit best in? If I'm doing film, it's like 0 budget. I should be able to shoot this in my apartment and a friend's apartment, and I'll go out some restaurants or in a bar. Literally low ground. Like I have nothing. I have my phone camera, and I'm gonna go out there and shoot it. And comics, I can be as bombastic and crazy as I want. And I feel like, you know, I'm not very experienced in playwriting or, you know, plays in general, but like I feel like that's like right in the middle where you could do a bit more maybe like on the stage with your props and, you know, being creative and whatnot and colorful and perform it than you could in a film. But then a comic, you could even push those boundaries even more.
Well, it's so funny that you bring up budgets, because that's actually how I started writing plays, was because our budget got cut I was helping out like the 5th grade musicals, right, with the music teacher, and I was like directing the skits and blah, 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 blah. And then the budget got cut, and we couldn't do it the way we did it before. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm moving on. And the music teacher said, no, you're going to form a drama club. And you're going to like, you know, do this thing with these kids because they need this and you're good at it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do that. And then blissful ignorance comes back again. Like it was literally, we had $0 in budget, and I couldn't afford to buy one of the plays from one of the publishing companies. So I said, you know, completely ignorant, completely irrational confidence, I guess I will just write my own. I didn't know if I could or couldn't. I just knew that I didn't have any money, so that made the most sense. And then I, you know, started doing it. Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny that you said that. Yeah, that just popped back into my brain. That's how it started.
Well, real quick, now that we're talking about plays, wasn't there something at the end of like a Shakespeare's Tempest, where they talk about like the stage is the world's play or something like that.
Oh yeah. Wait, is that at the end of Midsummer Night's Dream or is that Tempest?
That's Tempest.
I can't remember.
I believe it's Tempest. I studied Shakespeare for a semester. I should know this.
Yeah, and then so I used to do this. I found this woman. Oh God, what was her name? Lois Burdett, who wrote this series of. She took about 12 Shakespeare plays and wrote them accessible for elementary school students.
Oh, nice.
And I used to teach a Shakespeare unit in my elementary school classroom, and they were illustrated by like second, third, and fourth graders. It was delightful. And I remember it was like this little mini research thing where I'd send the kids off to find, because there's the in Midsummer Night's Dream, you've got the Nick Bottom and his troupe of actors.
Yeah.
Who Puck messes with and the whole donkey stuff, and they're on their way to perform at the double wedding, and the play that they perform is basically Romeo and Juliet plot.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I used to send fourth graders out into the world to do the research, like which came first, the chicken and the egg. Did Shakespeare just lift his own story and put it in Midsummer Night's Dream, or did he write this kind of like frivolous little tale for Nick Bottom to perform, and then that turns into Romeo and Juliet? So they had to go out and they had to research, dates of, when this one was published and this one was performed, and, the cause and effect stuff. And oh God, it was so much fun doing that with little kids. I mean, they had a third and fourth grader version of Macbeth.
Oh,
and those kids ate it up. It was so good.
How do you pull that off? Like,
I don't know, but it worked. It totally worked.
Yeah, but
that is too cool.
As an appreciator of like theater, that's the I can't find the quote, but that's like the quote is like, the stage could be anything. It could be the world, right? So even a zero budget could work. Like, it may not be the high end like stage you want, but you can make it work, and that's kind of like the beauty of it. But God, I was like so excited to talk about like Shakespeare and plays all of a sudden. Do you feel like having a background in writing plays and theater and all that helped with comic book scripts, or do you feel like it kind of worked against you, or they kind of blended together and you're kind of like, okay, I'm kind of in my element?
I mean both, because it's what gave me that irrational confidence that I could do it, even though it was a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know how, maybe having a feel for dialogue, maybe having a feel for what it takes to write down and, write a script that's 40 pages or 100 pages, and like just the skill of actually writing and pacing yourself, not even the pacing of the story, but like pacing yourself and how you do the actual creation of words and transfer to a page, and when the ideas come and when you go back and change it, and like developing what your process is as a thinker, probably. But honestly, like I was saying earlier, there is overlap for sure, and it's probably the two that are closest. It's still really far apart, and I can honestly tell you, like if I'm thinking back, like I was in a drastically different mental space, not just like where I was in my life, but drastically different mental space and how I was thinking and what I was thinking about when I created those two different types of writing, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So, and this came out pre-COVID, and this was set to release pre-COVID too, correct?
Well, yeah. So like it was in previews. It was in previews of February 2020, set to hit stores in April 2020. Oh, okay. So literally straddling the ground zero month, right? Yeah. I was there. You go on my Instagram account and you can see like this mini tour I went on of all these southeastern Michigan comic shops, like in February, going like, it's coming, let's go, woo! And then kablamo, and the release got so screwed up. So what ended up happening was, shipping international got shut down, right?
Yeah.
And so like if shops ordered directly through SourcePoint, they ended up getting their books early. If the shops ordered through Diamond, they got it months and months late. So it was like this weird scattered release. all of my signings, all of my appearances, all of my conventions, obviously gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, the process changed drastically. Now, what's the silver lining? Silver lining is I don't know any better. You know, when it's your first experience, like you don't have a frame of reference that it's supposed to go this way.
Yeah.
You just know this is the way it's going to be. So instead of going to a signing, instead of going to Motor City Comic Con in 2020, which was supposed to be my first con in May, I did pushing like 75 podcasts and interviews and shows and stuff like that, where you know, like when I was asking questions of people who had been there before me, like, oh yeah, you know, I put out a book, I maybe do like 10 interviews. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do 50. You know what I mean? Because it's here and it's something, and so like it became more of a word of mouth thing, and it became more of a this person tells that person, or you sell one copy at the end of it, you know, that kind of thing, and this process kind of happened. It just happened differently.
Yeah.
And then what it did though is it prolonged the first time experience joy, right? Because I spent like 2 years with the elation and the overwhelming satisfaction and fanboy giddiness of signing the contract, of getting hooked up with Adam Ferris as an artist and getting the first sample pages and character sketches, seeing the first page come in, watching Justin Birch letter 2 of the pages over a FaceTime call, and like just like, oh my God, it's real, you know, all those little moments. And then the last big accumulating thing was supposed to be sitting on the other side of the table for the first time, signing books, shaking hands, meeting people, you know, putting in their hands. And it got delayed a year. It got delayed 18 months or whatever it was. And all that means is now this kind of magical thing that has been in the back of my brain for 20 years. It's lasting a little bit longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true too.
Like right now, so here we are in the fall of 2021, right? And Motor City is in a week and a half.
Yeah.
And Baltimore's in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. And
I would have been done with all that stuff. And so now I get to experience those kind of things. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of cool. I'm not mad at it. I'm okay because I got to do these other things in the meantime, and we basically sold out of the print run of the book through word of mouth and through, you know, Instagram Live and podcasts and stuff like that, which is not easy to do when you're an unknown author, an indie comic, and you know, doing a lot of self promotion.
And this also led to the Ringo nominations as well. Right.
So like so what you're not hearing me talk about, like I talked about the pages coming in, I talked about the lettering, I talked about being in previews, I talked about shows and stuff. There are 2 things that I haven't brought up. And the reason why I haven't brought them up is because I can't even to this day wrap my brain around them.
I bet. I can only imagine.
Yeah. And that is the fact that variants have been made of my book, and that it got nominated for 2 Ringo Awards. Like, I don't even know how to wrap my brain around this idea, because that's not even on the radar of, ooh, that will be cool when that happens or if it happens. Like, those 2 things they're not even registering, right? When I got that announcement, like, there's going to be a variant of your book because this shop wants to do exclusive. Oh, no, now there's going to be 2. Now there's going to be 3. And they sold out. Like, I can't even... that's the comic book nerd in me going, oh my God, really?
Yeah, no,
hey,
yeah,
I was
so
on
cool.
The pleasant surprise.
I was on. We were on vacation. It was like the last week before I had to go back to school in August. Okay, and we had a pretty up and down summer. There was some personal tragedy in the family. Both of my wife's parents died within 6 weeks of each other. Okay, and so like our summer was like, some wonderful things happened and some pretty terrible things happened. And the time that we were going to spend as a family together got very much either canceled or postponed. And so like this 1 week right before school started, right before the chaos of having to go back and deal with 180 teenagers and their essays every few weeks, right? And the stress of that, we headed off on vacation. And I unplugged And I tried to, that OCD, like I start having school nightmares on August 1st. Like, and I always, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm that dude that if you let me, I'll go in and start setting up my classroom on August 1st and just like wait there for a month.
You've been here since 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. Yeah, I know. School's starting.
Like, literally ruined more than a third of my summer just waiting for the inevitable to happen, you know? And my wife was like, no, you're going to unplug. And we go up there and we're a couple days into the vacation. We go up to Mackinac Island in Michigan. It's like one of my favorite places on earth. And on Wednesday, I'm not getting good reception. I'm still getting some texts. I'm not getting email. I'm definitely not getting much internet.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam Ferris, the artist, like sends me a text and he's like, hey, way to go. Congratulations. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then it starts to put together. And there's these 2 Ringo nominations. And I'm like, I couldn't process.
This is a typo, right? This is a typo. This is not.
Yeah, right. And I finally find some Wi-Fi somewhere, and like my name is on this list next to the dude who writes Batman. I'm like, what the hell is going
Ringo,
on? This is not.
Why are we talking about the Beatles? Like, what's going on?
It's real. Yeah, I know. So then the hits keep on coming. Like you go over the Baltimore Comic-Con website and just on the main page and you start to scroll down.
I'm going right now.
And you recognize everybody's name. And like, there's Garth Ennis, right? And 2 names above him is mine as like a featured guest at like the biggest creator comic show on the planet. Like the one that is the most creator friendly in the United States.
Hell,
it's like,
yeah.
I like, what is this? You know, it's crazy.
I just looked it up.
I can't.
I just looked it up.
I'm going.
Fun. Dude,
it's my version of Googling yourself. Every once in a while, I just pull it up and go, no.
You're like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's real. Yeah, hey, it is.
You know what, though? I'm going to say it. Congratulations. Hell yeah.
Man,
soak it up.
This is the dream.
Yeah, you are living the dream, and I congratulate you 100,000%. You know, I think it's amazing, and I think it's awesome. And as someone who wants to be in that same exact position, yes, I'm jealous, but you know what? I'm happy for you, and I'm glad that dream is coming true. Honestly.
Dude, your name's on this.
Hey, I don't even have. I've got 3 children. I've got 180 teenagers I'm responsible for every day. I've got a wife who is not impressed with my book at all. So do not worry. There has not been a time frame of more than about 15 seconds where I'm allowed to have a swelled ego or head because I've got laundry to do as soon as you and I are done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've got essays to check until about midnight when you and I are done. Like there is nothing where I'm going, yeah, look, I'm like the from Anchorman. There is no point where I'm like, I'm a pretty big deal. It has never come out of my mouth, and it never will, because there are plenty of people in my life to remind me that it's not true.
Well, reflecting on that too, like are you working on another piece? And if so, like how was writing during the COVID era? And how does that like reflect in your work? I mean, writing comics and life balance, like all that put together.
Yeah.
I submitted a prose piece that I wrote this summer for like a short story anthology about that SourcePoint should be putting out about local legends.
Nice.
And that was something that I wrote, during COVID. I do have my next comic book project that is, first issue is completely written. Issue 2 through 3 are plotted, story beats, research is done, character bios, like it's ready to go. I'm just back at stage ground zero because Parallel got published in such an unorthodox 21st century way. It was not crowdfunded. Mm-hmm. It was not a Kickstarter. It was literally, again, my blissful ignorance of not knowing how things worked. I took, oh my God. This will amuse you. I took the first 32 pages, right, that I told you that I wrote in that bubble, and I made a few copies on the copy machine at school.
Yeah.
I went into my classroom and I put them in, the file folders, manila folders, classroom folders. Beautiful colored paper clips from my desk drawer with like the cover letter and stuff like that. And I took it to Motor City Comic Con and like literally walked up to publishers. And the first one that caught my eye was Sourcepoint, because they had been crushing it on the con scene for 10 years before they got hooked up with Gaiman, with previews, before they cut their Simon & Schuster deal, before they were making feature films. And I walked right up to this dude with a glorious red beard, because he looked like he knew what he was doing. And it just happened to be Travis McIntyre, the co-founder, president, and editor-in-chief of Sourcepoint. And I literally, like, again, not knowing this isn't how it's done, handed him this packet and was like, here, would you like to maybe publish my comic? And like, not picking up on social cues. I might as well have been like a 5-year-old. The side eye he's giving me, I'm just enthusiasm. I'm keep on going. I might as well be 12. And he responded to some of that energy, and he's like, you're strange. It seems like you're trying to pitch a comic to me like it's 1971. It's not, but I like the cut of your jib. I'm going to read this in the hotel tonight. You come back and see me tomorrow and we'll talk.
Oh, wow.
And I did. And he's like, I was signing a contract a week later.
Nice.
He knew I didn't know how to do anything. So he's like, we're going to do something different. First of all, it's not issues. It's a 64-page one-shot. You think you can go back and write me the second half, another 32 pages. And I did that thing that actors do where they're lying in an audition and they're like, can you ride a horse? And like, yes, I can ride a horse. They've never even seen a horse.
Yeah, of course,
yes,
dude.
I can go write.
That's how you got to do it.
Yes, I can write 32 pages. I'm like, I don't know if I can, but yes, I can.
Hell yeah, I will.
Yeah. Right. And I went off and that whole process started. But that's not the way comics are made in the 21st century.
No.
It's not the way. They found Adam for me. They hooked me up with Bob. Now, does that completely change your pay structure? Does my contract look a little less favorable on the back end than most creator-owned things? Absolutely. But this is about a dream come true and a lifelong dream being fulfilled. But that's not the way comics are made. So this is a very atypical in a lot of ways. Now, what that does to me, coming back to your question, is I'm now back at stage one. I have this project that's ready to go, but it's not going to get published in this weird, magical, dumb luck in some ways, but some ways out of my enthusiasm and hard work in other ways. But it's not going to happen that way again. And I don't know how to do the 21st century crowdfunded thing yet. So this is something else I've got to learn. Mm-hmm. It's another learning curve for me, but it's a story I'm really passionate about. It's dedicated to my late grandmother and actually all the female students who have gone through my classroom for the last 22 years. Because it's really about, so it reminds me of Parallel in these ways. Number one, it's because I'm a comic book nerd. It is definitely wrapped in a classic a comic book trope. In this case, a superpowered individual. Mm-hmm. Okay. But at its core, it's about deeper things, just like Parallel is. It's about identity. It's about gender. It's about race. It's about bottling up who you are when you shouldn't. But it's something you actually have to do. And it's a post World War II, 1946 small town Plymouth story. A lot of family connections, a lot of real life research. History nerds will love it. Superhero nerds will love it. And I'm really excited about it, but I have to learn how to get it into the world. So another learning curve coming my way.
Yeah, it's crowdsourcing. It's not something we've dabbled too far into, but it is a daunting thing. But hey, I mean, whenever that's ready, whenever you have to go, we'll definitely promote the hell out of it and help you 100%. Out. You definitely 100%.
Yeah, we do our best to help out, independent comics, especially like to just get the name out there,
Yeah, that's and dude, I can't believe you've had this much success off your first book. It is astonishing and awesome, and I feel like that's the way you do get into comics, is by it being totally different and random than anyone else, and everyone has a unique story. Yep. And everyone says this isn't the way you get into comics, but it's that random, unique, crazy story. That's just how you get into comics.
So there's two things I want to say about that. Number one, I think besides having now insight onto how like the sausage is made, and maybe even because of that, I have such a higher appreciation of comics when I read them now.
Oh, I bet. Like
having been on the other side of a 3-year process, like a floppy that I might read in the old days in, sit down in 15 minutes or whatever. Like I can see the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it and behind it, you know, in a way that I couldn't before. And that's it hasn't, you know how some people say like once they like work at a place, it like takes them out and they can't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah.
It's actually heightened my enjoy of it. It doesn't take me out of it. I'm not seeing the seams like, oh look, you know, like, you know, when you make movies and then you see, oh, there's where the cut is, and oh, that's not one shot, 1917. I see where you cheated. I saw you pass that telephone pole. I know. Oh, I know. I see where that tree went by. That's a cut. Like, it's not that at all. It's literally just like I can feel the work behind it, and it actually enhances the appreciation of what's going on there. Now, so like that's come out of it. Like, I got to be really careful. Here's the thing I want to tell you. Especially early on in this process, when I was like talking to people on shows and stuff like that, doing interviews, I was told by some of my colleagues and some of my source point friends that I was actually overusing the word lucky. That I just used it too liberally and too freely about me personally. Because I felt very lucky, right? Like, I mean, it feels like huge strokes of luck and huge strokes of cosmic whatever to first time, you know what? I mean, SourcePoint was the first publisher I didn't hand it to somebody else and they said no. It was like, it's so first, all the way up to Ringo's. That how do you not feel lucky? How do you not have imposter syndrome, like just like streaming through your brain every 5 seconds? And then what they tried to explain to me, and what I'm trying to be more careful of, is like, when you pass it off to luck, you are undermining not only all the hard work you put into it, but all the hard work that everybody else who's on the team put into it too.
Yeah,
and so you got to be careful about that. And like, you know, you and I are talking about this 3-year process in a very condensed format, right? Like, you and I are talking for an hour plus, and, you know, we're not going to get necessarily into the weeds of the amount of time and effort that went into, forget about writing the comic, but like the promotion, right? Like, you don't sell all those copies unless you're like hustling all the time, every free moment. I'll tell you what, I will right now on record say that I have gained all the weight that I've gained over the last 2 years, not because I am now a middle-aged man who doesn't exercise as much as I should, not because of COVID, no other excuse other tn instead of exercising, I'm posting something on Instagram, I'm doing another interview, you know, that kind of thing. Let's say that. Let's slough off my excuse of my widening tire in the middle to that. I think I'm very comfortable with that. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got to be careful of that lucky word, because you're then shortchanging what you've done, and you're shortchanging what all the other people have done on your behalf along this road.
I think. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I would say I can understand both sides of that. You know, you're just in, you know, shell shocked. You know, in that sense of just like. Yeah. Whoa, it's so fast. I just was just trying to do this thing and hope it worked out, and boom. But then, like, everyone had the faith in your story and everyone understood it well enough, and I feel like the artists really captured the essence of these characters and their emotions. And, you know, I think everything that went in, the lettering is wonderful, top to bottom. It's one of those books where it's just like, damn, I see your point behind it. You know, that totally makes sense. And we tend to forget the bigger picture when it's just like, oh, I was just trying to hope somebody read this once, you know.
And then I think the other thing too is when you have like a first time success, regardless of how you went about it, you know, it could be that you went to the right person, or you wrote that damn good of a story, or whatever it may be, or it landed in someone's office. Like, a first time success is one of those surreal experiences that, to my understanding, is one of those things that you, like you were saying, you're like, Ringo Award, what? You know, it's just like you start like processing everything, and it becomes so hard to process, and you want to attribute that to luck, but sometimes it's just hard work is paying off. Hard work and dedication and practicing your craft and having patience and taking the time to work with a team and taking the time to edit and peer review and work together, it's paying off.
It doesn't hurt that I'm the age that I am too. You know what I mean? It doesn't hurt that like this is happening when it is, instead of I'm 19 or I'm 21 and you don't necessarily have the context for what success or failure is in other parts of your life, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I've got a play published with one of the big 4 play publishing companies in North America, but they also rejected 4 other ones. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so maybe not in the comic world, right? Maybe it's a first time success there, but like, oh yeah, I have failed at plenty of things in my life, and that has definitely helped temper this experience and put that in a more realistic context of what this actually means in the greater scheme of things.
Yeah, like, you know, they've always told us in creative writing, at least in my college, you know, you submit your stories, you submit your plays to everyone that will look at it, and you know, for every 100 no's, 1 yes is still like something to be excited about. You know, so having that experience, like you're saying, like gives you that perspective. It gives you context to like, you know, getting a first time yes is like, oh, well, this is awesome, and it's almost too good to believe.
This is how it works.
Yeah.
This is how it's always going to be.
Yeah. It's like almost too good to be true, right? You're like, wow, it happened.
Yeah.
And it's like age and success are so weird, and you know, we are younger, you know, like we said, we're 30, approaching 30, and you know, we always get scared of just the theme of your whole story. But like, I always look back at the whole Jack Kirby thing where he was like, what, 44 or something when he drew Fantastic Four for the first time, and it's just like, and then he did all that cool shit right after that. You know what I mean? Like everything took off, and that's when we got New Gods and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, yes, this is where I'm at in life right now, but I mean, I still have so much more time to do, and I feel like we're so rushed when we're young, and you're in school, and you're, you know, when I was in school, I was producing a story a week, a completed story a month, and then I graduated, and now I'm like, fuck, like, how do I do this? How do I even get through page 3 in a week? And it's scary, you know, and it's one of those things. It's like, you know, you can do it when you have time, but it's like now you could really breathe and take it in, and I feel like all that's just been building inside of you this whole time, and it just exploded, and you had this, you know, I don't know, cosmic force that just guided you in the right direction, because it's just been sitting there waiting for you to do it.
There was definitely some Kirby crackle going on in my brain. So, little cosmic Kirby crackle for sure.
I still say hell yeah, congratulations. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
I hope that, you know, whatever you want to keep doing, and that your next story gets someone to look at it, and you know, we'll be excited to see what it is. And the one thing I did want to ask is kind of out of left field and more just like random, but you know, we're talking about being appreciators of comics because that's why we're here, obviously. Like, we love comic books. I'm just curious, like, what were, you know, if you're comfortable saying what you hated growing up, what were some of your favorite like influences, superheroes, independent books? Maybe there's like a dream character you have to write, you know, a really ambiguous, all-encompassing kind of massive question.
So true as a kid and true as an adult. I did the very typical, I took my hiatus from comics, right? Like mid-late teens, and then I didn't come back until in my 20s. It's like a 9-year break.
Right? Yeah,
I've been there.
Right. Yeah. So, but even as a kid, and definitely now, I think the best way to describe like who I was as a collector / reader was almost a perfect 50-50 split of appreciator of story and like digging into a universe or an author or a world that was created, and it's just the pure reading, right? And the other half is just pure nerd collector, right? Like, I remember being 12 years old and going and finding any store that had a box of comics because I was looking for first issues, you know, and not knowing what that really meant, knowing that if I found a copy of Steel Town Rockers #1, which is garbage, like I'm like, yes, I found a first issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's half of me that's doing that, but at the exact same, there's half of me that's chasing down when Spider-Man #1 comes out, right? In the green poly bag and the blah blah, like going to getting on my bike and going to every single drugstore within like a blah 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 mile radius to like try to find them and that kind of thing. And at the same time, my pull list at my local shop at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old is not the die cut cover, the embossed silver foil Punisher number, whatever. It's Sandman Mystery Theater, and every single Valiant book.
Oh wow, nice. Oh yeah.
Story, universe. I mean, what is going on in my 12, 13-year-old brain where I'm like, Sandman Mystery Theater, like Guy Davis drawn film noir stuff from the 1930s? Really? I guess the same 12-year-old who on one hand is watching like in a double feature is watching Predator and then All the President's Men. I think that's you know what I mean? But like very weird. Like I wouldn't even say eclectic, just like that's strange. Those flavors don't go together. So like here I am like diving into some of the best storytelling that has ever happened in comics. And like I was a huge Valiant fan just because that universe was manageable.
Yeah.
Like that the Barry Windsor Smith art on a couple of books was just it's running, excuse my parallel, I said the word, it's running parallel with Image, right?
Yeah.
And Image is this other thing that even at the time where I'm going, I really need a Spawn #1, I'm like, I don't want to read it.
Yes.
I don't even like all his muscles. I want to see Barry Windsor Smith draw, you know, a Solar Man of the Atom a bit more realistically, and Archer and Armstrong, like my favorite. I mean, he's drawn a fat guy, and it's more real. I loved it. I loved that stuff. And then that really transferred today. I'm back in that same spot where I have got my artists, I've got my authors, I've got my universes, and that's what I read over and over and over again. And at the same time, I'm unrealistically trying to put together a run of Uncanny X-Men.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And like collecting this, and I'm a sucker for a key if I can get it at a deal, but I'm also wanting to dig through dollar bins to find so there's this a very manageable thing that I just put together was Mike Mignola did a run of covers for Classic X-Men in the very late 80s, early 90s, and pre-Hellboy, but it's very pre-Hellboy Mignola art.
Oh, wow.
It's not like his run of covers from Hulk from like 85 where you're just seeing little glimpses of it. It's full on his
art style,
more or less fully developed style, but he's like drawing Storm and he's drawing Wolverine, and it's for me, it's breathtaking.
Oh,
and you're not finding those in a labeled bin. You're finding those in a quarter bin, in a 50-cent bin, in a dollar bin. And like, I'm the kind of comic nerd who, like, when I pull out that one last one that I needed, I'm yelping just as big as like the purchase of buying, you know, Hellboy and Next Men and getting that key. Do you know what I mean? Like, just like that excites me just as much. And then I go home and I put it in a box and reread Sandman, you know, like I want, you know, that kind of thing. In fact, during my hiatus, right, during my 9 years that I took a break, the only two comics that came with me were Sandman and Art Spiegelman's Mouse.
Oh, nice.
So that's what traveled with me and was my bridge. In fact, it was Neil Gaiman who brought me back into comic shops. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in like 2003-04, he came back to comics after not really doing comics for 6 years because he did Marvel 1602.
Yeah.
And it was actually, ironically, to raise money for his legal battle against Todd McFarlane for the rights to the characters in Spawn #9. And
Miracle Man and all that.
I walked back into a comic shop to pick up 1602 #1. And right at that point where Walking Dead starts, Invincible starts, and like there's this new little push and whatever, you know, Marvel's out of bankruptcy and stuff starts to happen again. And I was
you're just hooked in.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
That's how they get you in the hiatus when you take that break. Same shit happened to me. Sorry. It's just I was in a comic book class for college. My professor was talking about something with Batgirl. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go check out this Batgirl issue, you know? Like, let me see it. And it was like, I remember it was Batgirl number 14, written by Brian Q. Miller. and it was Stephanie Brown Batgirl, and it was a night where they go to watch a 3D movie, and they fight a bunch of vampires that come out of the movie screen, and I was like, this shit's amazing. I was like, oh, and Supergirl's in this? Let me try reading Supergirl too. And then, you know, it all spirals, and I'm like, oh yeah. I like Spider-Man, and then I'm spending like $80 a month on comics.
Yep.
I feel like I mean, Al Moore's Miracle Man is the one that I could recall that really just like reignited my fire, and I was like, dear,
that one reignited my appreciation for like deep cuts. You know, like no one talks about Miracle Man. No one talks about how like Neil Gaiman never got to finish it either. You know, like and I read that book too, and I was infatuated. I was like, this shit's crazy. How did we not know about this?
The reason why we haven't done the show yet is because we just want to like just go straight in and just blow that one up. And it's really cool hearing how big of a Neil Gaiman fan you are. I have one superhero. I have tattoos and everything all over, and I have one comic book tattoo, and it's of Dream's helm. And that is like I'll show you right now. Yeah, that is my only comic book tattoo. And when I showed it to Neil when I met him, and he was just astounded. And Sandman means so much to me, and it's a comic that has like really got me to want to write, and it was there for me through some crazy moments. And my fiance and I, when we first started dating, I'm just gonna spoil this, she'll get mad. I think it's volume 6 or 7 where Dream is just like crying and he's all brokenhearted, and it's the beginning of that volume, and he's just saying that like he's destroyed. Me and my when we were boyfriend girlfriend, we broke up for just a little bit, and then I was just destroyed, and I opened up Sandman, and then there was Dream pouring his heart out from his heartbreaking, and I was like, this is fucking it, this is everything. And I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. So are you hyped about the show, or have you checked out the audio?
I'm trying not to. I like to temper my excitement.
Yeah.
I like to be cautiously as optimistic about stuff in my old age, so that if it's disappointing, I'm not hurt as much.
Right.
I mean, I like that he's involved. It's something that I was very happy that for decades it didn't happen, because
it wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't have been proper. You know.
Right. So I'm really, really cautiously optimistic. I hope so. I hope it's one of those shows that no matter how closely or loosely it follows, that it's its own thing and it works.
Yes.
Right. You know how many there's so many translations that work or don't work. You know, like Walking Dead worked as television shows for several years really well, even though it diverged from the book so much, because it did its own thing, and yet it wasn't something else at the same time. I remember reading, like when I got back in, I started reading Marvel's Ultimate comics, right? You know, with Ultimate Spider-Man and stuff like that. And it was like, it was the same, and yet it was its own thing, and it really, really worked. And sometimes that happens, and sometimes, the Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, completely worked, and The Hobbit as a film was a disaster.
I totally agree with you on that.
It's like I don't necessarily know what the formula is each time, because sometimes it's the Lord of the Rings works because it's a literal translation, leaving out things, but not changing much, right? The Hobbit doesn't work because there's so many changes that just So it's like, what do what's going on? I'm not quite sure what the formula is and why something does or why something doesn't, because, Walking Dead changed 100 things, but it still worked. Sandman's going to change probably a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And hopefully it works.
Total agreement. That's cool. I'm really excited to... Once it comes out, I'm going to ask you what you think about it. I'm super hyped. We'll have a discussion on that.
Sounds good.
I always say that's my comic book sin. I have yet to ever have read Sandman,
and we're gonna go over everything. So you
got to do it.
It's funny, Brandon and I, we always talk about how we're opposites. He's got his like Sandman tattoo, and I'm like, I love Calvin and Hobbes. That's like, I wish I could show it to Bill Watterson, my tattoo, but no one even knows where the guy lives. So you know what?
Famous recluse.
Yep. And he's damn good at it.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, I have one more question, and it's something we kind of ask everybody towards the end of the show, especially creators. But if you got to write one Marvel or DC character, who's your go-to? Who is the one that you would drop everything and be like, I'm gonna write this character? And this.
I got one more question after too.
Okay, so this is we did some semi-sophisticated comic talk just now, right? We're going a little highbrow. I dropped not only we talked Sandman, I dropped Sandman Mystery Theater.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Okay. I am about to turn the tables, and I want to write Morpheus. Oh my God, it would be way too scary.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, that's intimidating.
Here we go. Ready? This is the lunch pail answer. All right. This is the hard hand answer. I would kill. I think it would be so much fun to write Wolverine in a cabin in the wilderness, wearing flannel shirt story where he goes into the local tavern. There's probably a bear that killed somebody. He's got to track something. It's actually a human. He gets in a bar fight. He doesn't quite pop his claws, but he wants to. I'm a loner. I don't work with anybody. There's a woman who loves him and he sloughs her off. I would write the hell out of that because it would be so much fun.
We were just saying for the Wolverine game that just got announced, like that's kind of what we want out of it. So yeah, cool. Down for that.
I think we mentioned something like we want him in Canada, like
we want the flannel and everything. Yeah, hell yeah.
I always forget he's like from there.
Always.
Yeah, yes. I'm like, oh yeah, he's Canadian. I was like, that's right. The question I had was like somewhat similar, given the chance to write like a famous character. From the looks of it, you are a fan of, you're an appreciator of all comics, right? You like Spider-Man, you like X-Men.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You've mentioned that Wolverine would be like the dream story to write. Now, to kind of piggyback off that question, if you were given the choice on the DC side, because we always compare the two because that's just what it comes down to, who would you want to write? And then between independent, Marvel, DC, whatever, who would be like your dream team of like co-writer and artist? Or would you just not have a co-writer?
So okay, no, I can answer this. Jay Lee's doing the covers.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh, nice.
Jay Lee.
Jay Lee's doing the covers. So my cover artist, like on my want list, like if I'm not putting together a run of I'm trying to put together my Dazzler run. I just finished my Thing from the 80s run. But if I'm doing like my cover artist run, it's Mignola, it's Barry Windsor Smith, and it's Jay Lee.
There you go. Yeah.
Probably my top. I want Jay Lee doing the covers because those are just, oh my God, they're gorgeous. I probably actually want to write with Mike Mignola because like the way he's doing a lot of his writing right now is like when he partners up with somebody, he's got some pretty broad strokes and story ideas, but he kind of turns the co-writer loose on the story and gives him a lot of leeway. So like I get to play in his universe. I get to play with the fact that he's got a better core idea than I could ever come up with in my life. Then I get to use whatever skill I might have to kind of play with this thing that he created and I would be so happy with. So totally that. And then let's throw my third guy in there. Let's have Barry Windsor Smith draw it.
Yeah, man, you got a solid dude there.
Yeah, so I want to get all three of my dudes in there. The writer in the world right now that I probably have like the most respect for that's slightly more contemporary is Jeff Lemire, though. Like Jeff Lemire, I started reading.
Yes. Sorry, that's like my favorite author.
I caught him. I am famous for getting to things like 5 minutes too late. Like it's the whole story of my life. I don't have an older sibling. I don't have the cousin or the dude down the street who tells you what's cool. My parents were incurably uncool. My mom was offered tickets to see the Beatles at Olympia Stadium in 1965. She said no to a free ticket to stay home and wash her hair, which is apparently something teenagers did in the 1960s instead of going to Beatles concerts. And so like I would always come to something just a little bit late. Like I was never there for the first album. I was there for the second and then backtracked, right? And so like I didn't get Jeff's first book. I was there the day. What is it?
I can help you answer this. I have like every book by him.
What's the big epic? The Canadian? No, oh my God, way before Sweet Tooth. Oh my God, am I going to really turn around?
Was Black Hammer? That was after. Yeah.
Way before Black Hammer. Oh my God, guys!
The big epic.
Essex County. Essex County.
Oh, Essex County.
Essex
Yeah,
County.
that's a single
The
story.
first Essex County book dropped. Like I was there, so I didn't see. What is it? Straw Dogs came before that, which is a small, tiny book.
I
But
thought
like
Stray
from
Dogs.
that early day, I've been so on board with him. I think he's a genius.
Yes.
He is probably one of those dudes. Like I was thinking about like when I'm going to go to Baltimore, right, for the awards ceremony, and we're going to go to Baltimore, and I'm going to sell. Oh, I think we talked about this earlier. Are you guys ready? Do you want the exclusive?
Oh yes, please give us this announcement. So
for anybody who has listened to me ramble for however long we've been doing this, here's your payoff. Parallel in and of itself is they pulled like the last 40, 50 hard copies because it's about to sell out. So we're saving those for Motor City Comic Con. So Motor City Comic Con, which is like a week and a half away. It's not this coming weekend, it's the weekend after. We're going to sell those last copies. So like if you want one of those last copies, that's where you go. They pulled them off the website. We're going to sell those out. Baltimore's the next weekend. Baltimore, as much sense as it would make for me to go there and be part of the awards ceremony, I may even be presenting some awards. I'm very excited about that. It'd be kind of weird having me standing at a booth for 3 days going, hello, I'm a person who doesn't have something to give you.
I have a book. But go look it up.
I had a book.
Here's the link.
Ask Hints.
Yeah.
There is going to be a Baltimore Comic Con exclusive variant cover with the Ringo stamp on it that we're going to sell exclusively at Baltimore.
Nice.
News breaking here first. It's brand new. I just saw the art for it today. It is very cool. It's very broody, and Landon, for Brandon who read it, Landon like in the chair kind of looking like the world is not going well for him right now. That's going to be sold exclusively at Baltimore. I'm really excited about that. Oh God. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So yeah, you can still get the book digitally like you guys did at sourcepointpress.com. And then we're going to get rid of the last copies at Motor City and then sell the exclusive variant at Columbus, or not Columbus, at Baltimore.
Nice.
Sweet.
I have some friends that typically go to that con, so I might try to get them to find you and hunt down a copy for me, because that's exciting. That's too cool. Yeah. And just to have the Ringo stamp on it, a variant, your first book, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm so hyped for you. I'm so hyped that this much has come out of this book and how much has transformed for you over the last year. And despite COVID being in the way, it actually worked out for you and it benefited you in the long run, and you get to celebrate. And you know, I'm when your second stuff comes out, you're gonna have people waiting for it.
Yeah,
I guarantee that.
Oh, it sounds good. It sounds good. Thank you so much.
Let me just say, I love that you love Mike Mignola and Jeff Lemire. Sorry, people who listen to the show, I go crazy for Jeff Lemire. I'm like,
oh, he's so good.
Yeah, I'm like number one fan status.
Oh, that was my point. There's like there's a handful of. It's one thing to walk up to somebody you admire at a con and ask them to sign. I have embarrassed myself by taking like ridiculous stacks of books.
Oh yeah, me too.
Oh yeah,
record-setting stacks of books. And like, I didn't even know I made these many books. It's one thing to do that, and it's one thing to maybe get some time and make a connection. I very much modeled. I've done a couple of shows now. I did Astronomicon this summer. I did a Detroit Book Fest. I'm doing Motor City in a week and a half. Blah 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 blah. I very much modeled all my experiences talking to other creators about like how I want to behave when I'm on the other side of the table. Right? You take the good, you take the bad. You realize that it's going to be somebody's only maybe interaction ever with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what mood you're in, and that I think that was already intuitive to me, because that's if you want to be a halfway decent teacher, you've got to do that too.
Oh,
right?
Oh yeah, of course.
So like that part is locked down. Okay. Like I'm getting under my belt how you behave and how you interact when you're on the other side of the table. Okay? I was very nervous about that a couple of months ago. I'm feeling pretty good about that right now. What I am not ready for is to walk into the hotel bar and Garth Ennis is sitting there and I sit down next to him and I don't know what to do next because we don't have a table between us and I don't have a stack of books. Like I know how to do that one.
Yeah.
What I don't know how to do is talk to some of these people who I have hero worship, things going on, and talk to them as something less than, you're awesome, will you please sign my books? Like I don't know how to do that yet, and I'm actually a little bit nervous. The good news now, this is terrible in some ways, but the good news is a new stack of essays are going to be turned in electronically right before I go to Baltimore. So if I want to, I can go and hide in a hotel room and score eighth graders, the 14-year-olds, semi readable writing all night instead of going there and running the risk of embarrassing myself in front of one of my heroes.
Man, that sounds like the most exciting thing to ever be nervous about. That makes me that made my stomach sink a little bit with that thought. And it's just like, oh, but fuck,
there's a whole different playing field.
Awesome.
I know.
When I met Mike Mignola, I was like, you just said, dude, Brandon, you just said that, and I got butterflies. Dude, I can't. That's exactly how I felt. You know what's the crazy part? No one lined up for him. It was just an empty table.
What? Are you kidding me?
At San Diego Comic-Con, there was not a single person there was like one person, but there's not a line. It was just one person that walked up and talked to him, and I'm like, holy shit, that's Mike Mignola. So I didn't even know he was going to be there. So I walked up there and I bought a bag and I got it signed and I talked to him. I took a picture with him and I was like, dude, we studied you in college. You're amazing. And he's just like, yeah, people tell me, I do these things and I just kind of did it because I thought it was cool. And he's just so casual about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I just met Mike Mignola. And then when I met Jeff Lemire, I was so nervous. I literally could not take a picture. I was like, I had that smile on my face. Like I literally shit myself. Like it was, and then, I shook his hand and I said, oh my God, I know you hear this, but I can't express how much I love your work. And, you inspire me.
And sorry for my sweaty
Yeah.
hand.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope you know that you inspire me and that I hope to be, good at writing comics as you are. And he goes, oh, you're trying to write comics? I'm like, yeah, that's the career I want. And he goes, I hope to read your stuff one day. And I swear to God, I was like, even if he's lying to me, that's all I needed to hear. Like, that was the greatest thing he could have ever told me. He literally, in the kindest way, he gave me all the time in the world. He told me, like, I wish you the best of luck. I can't wait to read your stuff. And, good luck out there. And I was like, Jeff Lemire just told me this. And I was like, I think I'm going to cry.
Yeah, meeting your heroes.
Brandon, that's a bit of magic. I'm so glad you got that moment.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So I love that you love them. I knew we were going to cross paths with appreciating certain writers and artists, but just wanted to fanboy out with you real quick.
Yeah, you have our attention. Your Gaiman and Lemire talk is on point for us. Like,
yeah.
If we're ever at a con or something, we got to get a beer or something and hang out and talk more.
Oh, dude, we're hanging out.
Like, that would be wonderful. Yeah,
It's happening.
This has been an awesome talk, and it's always kind of nerve-wracking. We established a brief interactions over Instagram.
Yeah, sure.
Stuff like that. But I'm so glad you got to come on the show. I'm so glad you got back to messaging us and got this going, and how fast we were able to do it all.
No, really, I appreciate it. You guys are really good at your job. This was a lot of fun. Like I said, I've done a lot of different types of interviews for this process, and you guys are ridiculously good at your job.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That means the world to hear that.
Yeah.
We got the business done, but it was just a lot of fun. So I really appreciate it.
And keep us posted on anything you have releasing, anything you have coming out. We'd love to share it. We'd love to support it as well. We do Kickstarters for anyone that we have on the show, and we really like to just really fund that because we know the struggle and we're going through it. So it's one of those things, like we're all just trying to support the industry. But do you have any last words, any other throwouts? Where can we find you?
Questions for us?
Yeah, I think we talked about this. I think that we talked about this off air ahead of time. Like, as a teacher, I am not heavy into social media. I only have one spot where you can find me, and that is on Instagram, and it's at JDouglasWrites. Go give me a follow, and I'm announcing the con schedule probably the next day or two, and then you guys got the little preview of the thing, but I will reveal the art, I believe, this weekend on the con exclusive, and let you know where I'm going to be at, and reach out to me on Instagram. Honestly, hopefully you've got the idea that I have no no big-headed ego. I'm not going to big time anybody. You got questions, I will answer it to the verbose length, to the point where you're going to have to say, I've got to go, as opposed to me saying, I don't have a lot of time. It's happened, guys, it's happened way too many times where like the person's like, I know you're really busy, and I just wanted to ask you this question, as a fan, or you as a creator, or something like that. And then I talk their ear off, and they're like, listen, this was really nice, but like, I've got to go do laundry now. Like, I've got things to do. See ya. I'm like, oh, sorry, talk too much. So yeah, you come and talk to me, and I will talk to you, and we can do whatever you want to do.
That's awesome. Again, thank you so much for doing this with us today. And
oh, my pleasure.
Let me just say that it is literally a matter of seconds to get Parallel on your device. Brandon sent me the link. I went to the link. $2.99 for a 64-page book. That is actually a good deal, because most books are barely 20 pages at that price, and it is seamless. You buy it, you download it, boom, you have the book. Read it on your phone, tablet, computer, it doesn't matter. It all works there, and I'm just throwing that out there that anyone can get it within seconds. So yes, go get the book.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much again, Jason, and thanks for hanging.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
you.